We know that women leave the home with about double the amount of toxins as men. And when I say toxins, we know these are endocrine disruptors, they're known carcinogens, things of that nature. So that's in our shampoo and our fragrance. And fragrance is a whole thing, right? It's like this trade secret that they don't have to disclose the ingredients. So toxic burden, I think, is a huge contributor for men and women because fertility, it's a 50-50 situation, you know?
Yep.
It's what the woman brings to the table, but it's also what the man brings to the table. So reducing toxins in your environment is critical.
Welcome back to another episode of the Smarter Not Harder podcast, your home for 1 cent solutions to $64,000 questions. I'm your host again today. My name is Dr. Scott Scher, and it's a pleasure to be back with all of you. So today I had a fantastic conversation with a good friend of mine, Kayla Barnes. And this is a fantastic episode. I'm excited to get into it with all of you. But before we get there, here's a bio on Kayla. So she's the co-owner of a place called Live the Wellness Space, one of the country's most innovative precision medicine and biology upgrading clinics. She's also the creator and host of the Longevity Optimization podcast, which I was on actually just a week before we recorded this one, and the co-founder of something called the Health Optimization Fund. She's a certified Amen Clinic's brain health practitioner, as well as in integrative nutrition. She's dedicated herself to the pursuit of preventative and regenerative methodologies aimed at optimizing female human health. Kayla has shared her labs publicly and is one of the most measured, if not the most measured woman in the world. And she has all of her labs and all of her protocols published on her website at kaylabarnes.com. Her endeavors have garnered international recognition from notable publications, and she has been named a top longevity leader globally. So as mentioned, I actually had a podcast with Kayla on her podcast last week, talking about some things in my world, which I'd encourage you to check out. But this was a fantastic conversation about Kayla specifically in her road or on her road to having what she hopes to be 7 kids. And so it was a fertility episode in general. But of course, when you're talking about fertility, you're not really talking about fertility by itself. You're talking about human optimization. You're talking about health optimization, because if you want to have a child and want to be the child to be as healthy and you to be as healthy, man or woman, you need to be optimized in your health as well. So we talked about a number of different things. We talked about, again, in the beginning, Kayla wishes to have 7 children. And we talked about her process and her ways of understanding this from the ecosystem that she's developing in her house, from the food to the water, to sleep, to hydration, to sunlight, and everything in between. We also talked about laboratory testing, things like measuring toxic burden, measuring her NutriVal, her GI effects, which we do at Health Optimization Medicine and Practice too. She measures all of these all the time and is getting the laboratory testing and using that in her own protocols to optimize her chances of having healthy babies, of course. And again, the fertility angle is where we go throughout this whole podcast, but it's important for men and women. Obviously, if you want to have children on the fertility side, women have to be healthy, but so do men. But also, again, this is not just about being fertile, but it's being optimal. So if you're optimized to be fertile, you're optimized for other things too, like having a brain that works and having cardiac capacity and having muscular strength and things like that. So we kind of transitioned in the podcast talking about, women's health as well, and the challenges that there are in understanding women and their health, and how she's looking at various biomarkers herself and publishing all this data on her website so that we can look at it as men and women looking at the website and seeing what she's doing and an N of 1 kind of scenario. So it was a really fantastic podcast to record with Kayla. There's a lot of actionable information in here. I loved her 3 ways to live smarter, not harder, because Kayla, myself, and others, we do spend a decent amount of money doing all these kinds of laboratory testing, the technologies that we use, everything from infrared saunas to hyperbaric chambers. The labs cost a lot of money. The other types of testing that we do can cost money. But she talks about the basic things that we can do every day. And we talked a lot about stress in this episode too, parasympathetic versus sympathetic response. We talked about the challenges Kayla may have when she actually has kids, and she doesn't have as much control of her schedule as I can well attest. So anyway, I really hope you guys enjoy this episode. It was a fantastic one to record. If you like it, please don't forget to like and subscribe below. Share with your friends and colleagues. Enjoy. All right, Kayla, how are you today?
I am doing really well. I'm so excited to be on your show.
Well, I was so excited to be on yours last week, and I really appreciate that we get to do this. I know I did it in person with you, which was very nice. Thank you for being remote with me this day and this time. I know we have busy lives. So, one of the things that you and I spoke about when we were together recording, as we were kind of going through your awesome setup and all your tools and technologies, was about you just got married recently. So congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. It's the best ever.
I know. So I want to talk a little bit about that too. But in conjunction with that, one of the first things when we were kind of walking around looking at your technology is like, well, I'm planning on having 7 kids. And I was like, 7? I have 4 kids. And I think that my life is crazy. But maybe like you come from a big family, I think, as well. And I think you said your husband. So talk a little bit about the decision in this day and age to have that many kids. And also, you're one of the most measured females on the planet. So talk a little bit about what are you doing in your own personal life now to get ready for that, and some pearls as other people are thinking about having kids too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as it relates to having 7 children, and maybe you can advise on this, but I feel like once you're outnumbered, I mean, it's fine. It's like the kids can play together, they can socialize one another. Do you agree with that? Like once you're outnumbered, why even stop? One
thing actually was told a long time ago when I think I just had my first, was that you want to have an even number of kids. Because if you have an even number of kids, nobody ever gets left out. If you have an odd number of kids, somebody gets left out. So that's one thing. And that might change with 7 though, because there's just so many. But I do think that like going from 3 to 4 was not a big deal. So it wasn't like a huge shift. It was certainly harder in some ways, but as far as like the number of children, it's definitely not a big jump from going from 3 to 4 as opposed from 2 to 3. I would agree with that.
Yeah. Well, also I've been an entrepreneur since I've been 17. I mean, I've been like incredibly ambitious, and I always knew my whole life that I had very big goals for myself. And as a woman, there were things that I wanted to do prior to getting married so that I could always be really proud of myself. And this is, of course, just my own personal journey, right?
Right.
I love when people get married young. I love when people get married older. It really just depends, but this is my journey. So I have a clinic. I started, in other ventures when I was young, but I've always wanted and had really big goals. And I've always poured myself, like I'm no stranger to hard work. I love working. And I knew that once I got married and started to have kids, that would be my new form of work, right? Not that I won't work continually because I love what I do, but I know that having 7 children, although that may seem, especially here in Los Angeles, it's like unheard of, right? That might seem like a really big goal, but I am so excited because I've worked so hard to teach myself incredible things, from how to optimize my health. I can't wait to give my children health that I never had. So as I am in preconception stages, I'm thinking about that because we know that the children get their mitochondria from the mother. We know that the children get their microbiome from their mother. My health right now and my husband's health, both are going to really contribute to the health of our children. And as much as my parents are incredible, they were not thinking about that when they were, getting ready to conceive me. Actually, I think, it was a date night and then I came. So it was a very different
Couple
situation.
Drinks. Yeah, the usual situation. Yeah.
Yeah, it was around, I think, Valentine's Day. So I have a November birthday. That situation. But I'm going at it at a totally different angle. So super excited to have as many children as we can. We'd be, of course, happy with less. But I'm just excited to raise up children in the way that they should go. I think I have one of the most incredible husbands on the planet. So that's also I wouldn't be as interested in having as many children if I didn't have such an incredible man that I knew that was going to lead them and that had very aligned values. So many, many reasons as to why I'm so excited to have many children. But I say, and I told my husband this when we met, that I've been preparing for children over the course of the last decades. And I don't want to set that as the expectation because there's so much that you can do even 3 months or a year out. And there's so much that you can do even if you don't plan for your babies and you get pregnant, right? But for me, I've been in the health optimization industry for a long time. I mean, over a decade. I studied nutrition in college. I did not grow up as a healthy kid. I grew up on the standard American diet. I was eating Pop-Tarts. I was eating Reese's Puffs, foods that like now are just so mind-blowing to me and that I don't even consider food.
Right.
Later, when I started to change what I was eating, I felt so much better, just better energy, I could work longer hours. And that was my initial interest into this industry. Was I was an entrepreneur. I wanted to be able to work harder, longer, be more productive. And I was like, okay, if food can do this much, what else can other modalities do? And I got just really intrigued by human optimization. But going back to the fertility component, we are in a really, in my opinion, scary time with fertility.
Yeah.
We know that infertility is really skyrocketing. And I don't think it's one single thing that we can say this is why we have issues with fertility. But as you know, I have a podcast where I interview medical doctors and scientists and researchers, all sorts of people. And we talk about fertility a lot. So I've gotten a lot of insight. And I think one of the biggest things is toxic exposure. So in my protocol, I do a test every year, actually sometimes twice a year. It's called the total toxic burden. So first we'll talk about the lab, and then we'll talk about what I'm doing to reduce my toxic burden. So we know that from every facet of our life, from the air, the water, to our personal care products, we are being essentially contaminated with toxins. And we know that everybody has a different size cup, let's say, that those toxins can fill up before it tips over. So my genetics actually allow me to detox better than, let's say, my husband's genetics. So I already have a step ahead, I guess you can say, from a genetic standpoint. But regardless of genetics, pesticides like glyphosate, which is a known carcinogen, and it's sprayed over all crops. I think 98+% of Americans have glyphosate in their urine. We know that women leave the home with about double the amount of toxins as men. And when I say toxins, we know these are endocrine disruptors, they're known carcinogens, things of that nature. So that's in our shampoo and our fragrance. And fragrance is a whole thing, right? It's like this trade secret that they don't have to disclose the ingredients. So toxic burden, I think, is a huge contributor for men and women because fertility, it's a 50-50 situation, you know? It's what the woman brings to the table, but it's also what the man brings to the table. So reducing toxins in your environment is critical. The way that I do that is a few things. First of all, and you've been to my home, let's start with the easier things. So air filtration, things like a really high quality HEPA air filter. I think Jasper is a great brand. Air Doctor is a great brand, but you want to have enough air filters to actually cover the square footage of your home.
Right.
I'm living in LA, so I have probably enough air filters for 5 of these homes. I have one in every room. But making your home as low tox as possible, I think, is incredibly important. So we have air filtration. Water filtration is another big one. I always recommend people go to the Environmental Working Group's local tap water database and look at what's in our water. It is very scary. Things from pharmaceuticals to obviously contaminants like heavy metals are in our water. And it's not just the water that we're drinking. Also, it's the water that we're showering in or the water that we're bathing in. So getting either like a reverse osmosis countertop water filter and shower water filters, if you don't own your home, or if you can, a whole home water filtration system is a game changer for, again, reducing your toxic burden. I also, in general, love the Environmental Working Group for Women because they have what's called the Skin Deep database. And when it comes to things like fragrance, I got rid of all of my high-end, nice fragrances like a decade ago, right? Because think about it, we're spraying this on our thyroid. And we know that autoimmune conditions, and I'm not saying it's only fragrance, it's obviously a plethora of things, but we're spraying it directly onto our thyroid, and we don't really know what's in these products. So if you go to the EWG and look at the Skin Deep database, you can find, you can start to learn what ingredients you want to avoid, but you can also find healthier alternatives. And we live in a time where, you know, all the makeup that I'm wearing at the moment is organic, right? It's all certified from the EWG, and we can make these small changes that end up to being a big impact in the long run. So we have air filtration, we have water filtration, we have reducing the toxins in our products, and then even things in the home. So I mean, things like carpets can harbor mold and different bacteria. So I have all hardwood floors. Even the couch that I got, they now have brands that are a little bit more green, eco-friendly, and also have a lower toxic burden because there was a time, and I believe this is outlawed now, but, you know, flame retardants were on everything. So if someone was smoking and dropped a cigarette on their couch, it wouldn't combust into flames. I think we've gotten rid of a lot of that stuff, but there are still harmful chemicals in things like our couches and our beds.
Pardon the interruption. This episode is brought to you by Health Optimization Medicine and Practice Association, a nonprofit organization training practitioners how to optimize health rather than treat disease. For this episode, check out Metabolomics module. This is our module on optimizing your cellular foundation, your vitamins, minerals, nutrients, and cofactors that can optimize fertility, both for men and women, but also optimize your health at the same time. This is a fantastic module for practitioners to take truly take your patients' health to the next level. Go to homehope.org and save 10% on this module or any module at Health Optimization Medicine and Practice by using code podcast10 at checkout. Now back to the show.
So beds, as much as you can, if you can get an organic mattress, I think is ideal, because we'll talk about sleep and its role in not only fertility, but optimal health. It's critical that you're spending 7 to 9 hours of high quality sleep. And those VOCs that can be omitted from the bed can actually disturb your sleep and harm your health. So organic mattress, things of that nature is just all reducing the toxic burden in your home, which when I look at my total tox burden, I have one of the lowest total tox burdens that I've ever seen. You know, at our clinic, we look at these all the time.
Yeah,
and it's interesting.
Like, how are you testing for toxic burden typically?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the Vibrant America total tox burden. So it combines environmental toxins, molds or mycotoxins, and heavy metals all into one lab. I know you and I talked about that too. So it's a urine test. Often I will provoke it with something like a DSMA just to get the most accurate read. Not everyone needs to do that. That's just what I do. But this is giving you an indicator of things that you might have no idea that you're exposed to. You could be next to a manufacturing plant next door that you don't know that you're being exposed to certain pollutants and contaminants. So there's essentially, it's like a high, a medium, and a low range. So I have no toxins as of my last total tox burden in the high range, and I only have 2 in the medium range. For reference, when we see people in the clinic, they often feel like, okay, I'm going to have no toxins because I'm living a very healthy lifestyle. I'm eating healthy food. I'm working out. And they come back and bam, 15 toxins in the high level, unbeknownst to them. So it's something that is just permeating us from every angle. And being aware of it is the first step. And I don't want people to feel overwhelmed because it's just making these small changes as you can. Same thing with household cleaning products. You know, there's a lot of companies that are a lot healthier for you when it comes to laundry detergents and cleaning agents, things of that nature. Always trying to avoid pesticides on our food. We've made nutrition so complicated, and we can talk about how I eat, but it's really, I think, much more simple than we've made it. It doesn't have to be vegan, carnivore, or anything extreme. It's just eating whole foods, single ingredients, and I try to avoid pesticides and chemicals on my food as much as possible. So doing organic or regenerative, biodynamic. Eventually, I just want to start growing my own food. I'm going to get some of those like lettuce grow towers, and I'm just going to do some raised beds out on my patio because there's also the nutritional content of the food, right? We know that our land, our fields are actually deficient in all of the minerals and nutrients that we need. So our food is less nutrient dense and is not having as many minerals as it used to have. So unfortunately, that leads us to like supplementation as well. But total tox, I think, is a huge thing for pre-conception, fertility optimization. And then once you've tried to minimize the toxins, you want to also excrete the toxins, which obviously we excrete toxins through urine, stool, and sweat. So I think these days, a sauna is non-negotiable. I love my sauna, and you can either have a sauna at home. I was telling you the brand Heavenly Heat because it's like the lowest VOCs on the market. They don't use the wood glues, no EMFs, but you can also go to a sauna at your local gym. They have centers popping up all over. They have the infrared sauna blankets that are more affordable, but sweating, and I would love your opinion on this, is I think it's critically important to health because we just weren't designed to withstand the amount of toxins that we're encountering today.
Yeah. I mean, this is a fantastic overview so far, Kayla. And I love how you went through all the aspects because this is not just about fertility, right? This is just our way in to talk about truly optimizing our health. Because if you're really optimizing your health, you're doing it over the long term for all the benefits and the beneficial side effects of doing that, including fertility being the primary objective on your side now. But this is in the context of the larger conversation, which is that if you're able to have a healthy baby, and if you are and doing that in the way that you're creating this whole ecosystem like everything else is going to get better too, right? This is a reflection of so much more. And when it comes to detoxification and saunas, it's one of my non-negotiables as well. When I found out that I was having our fourth kid, which was not planned, I was living in a 1,000 square foot house in California, Northern California. And we had 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom for the almost 6 of us at the time, plus a dog.
Oh, wow.
And we had one of those little squatty potties for the kids because they were potty training at the time. And I was like, there's no way we can do this. And how am I I don't have any room. So I ended up getting the sauna so that I could have my own like location where nobody could bother me for periods of time. But I use it almost 7 days a week at this point for detoxification. And it's a great way to relax the nervous system too, right? So I think that's a big part also. And I'm sure you think about this a lot when you think about your fertility journey, but also your health optimization, human optimization journey is the stress component of things and how to relax your nervous system. I know like you're like me where you could record or plan to record 4 podcasts and have 7 meetings in the same day. What are you doing? And I want to talk about how you measure things. And I know you're one of the most measured females on the planet, which I think is awesome because again, females are so much more complicated than men. And like having that data out there is going to be great. When you think about your journey with stress and like your parasympathetic activation, how has that been a part of your process as well?
Yeah, I mean, stress management, we know what 80% of all doctors' visits plus is related to stress. And it's also, I think, the hardest one to manage because it's so easy to say, oh, I need to be less stressed. Okay, but how do you actually do that, right?
Right. You can buy a new bed, but you can't buy less stress. It's not the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah. There's not just one supplement that's going to fix all your stress. And I think for me, it's 2 things as like an overview of how I view stress. Number 1 is I think it's really important that it's how you perceive it. So I have a very I get to mind and I thrive off situations in which I can learn. So I think how we perceive stress is really important also because if you feel constantly overwhelmed by small things or even big things, I always try to take a viewpoint as I can either win or learn from this. So I think that's really important. So I perceive stress for the most part as a good thing. Not to say that your body still doesn't experience stress, even if your brain is telling you that it's a good thing. So that's one thing. Second of all, I've really worked very hard in my life to create a life that I really enjoy. I think a lot of people are very stressed because they're living a life that is less than what they wanted, but they're not having the discipline or the consistency to actually get the life that they want. So I've had an incredibly disciplined life. And now I'm in a place where, and this was all planned. Again, this was all planned. So I worked really hard, many hours, still enjoyed my work, still implemented stress reduction practices that we'll talk about. But I was like, okay, now that I'm getting ready to have babies, it's really go time in all the fertility preconception stuff. So I have lightened my load actually starting next week. Meetings are very much minimized and I'm just pushing things out. Nothing is necessarily urgent. So it's me allowing myself to have the time and space that I need. And I also understand that not everyone can do that. So when it comes to practical tools of stress management, I love to look at HRV as a measurement of stress in the body. So I love my Oura Ring. I've had one for like 6 years. It was so fun.
I saw you on it a couple of days ago, I think so.
I know, that was so fun. I knew that they were doing a feature. I thought it was just going to be on their website, but I mean, I've opened the Oura Ring like tens of thousands of times. And when you open it up and see yourself in there, that's really fun. So they did a feature on like my longevity routines also. But anyway, so HRV is a measurement of stress on the body. It's essentially the time in between heartbeats. So if you can imagine your heart beating really fast, that's going to be a smaller amount of time. So throughout the day, first of all, in my morning routine, I do things that set my day to be less stressful. So for me, I mean, I love reading the Bible. That really helps me to de-stress.
Okay.
I pray for myself, my family, other people. That's reducing stress levels. I have a gratitude practice. I always say you can't be grateful and hateful at the same time.
Very difficult.
That's going to reduce stress right there. And then throughout the day, I make intentional commitments to doing breath work. I mean, we can change our anxiety levels, our stress levels through how we breathe. So I take really slow, deep, long breaths, long exhales throughout the day. And I do that 4 or 5 times. I also break up my day. So I'll go on a walk in nature, which we know is proven to reduce stress levels. I mean, I'm very blessed that it's beautiful here all year round and I can go on a walk in the hills. But, finding something, whether it's grounding in the summer, making contact with the earth, we know that can help to reduce stress. being in nature, reducing stress, or a breathwork practice to reduce stress, and looking at your day, honestly, and saying, where can I fit in some stress reduction techniques? And the other thing is too, is I love the quote, conflict delayed is conflict multiplied. So if you have things that are in your life, we can talk about all the tools, but if there's a glaring issue in your life and you're not addressing it, you are causing yourself so much stress. I always say that, anxiety happens with inaction. So I am constantly, the way I set my day up is I'm tackling the most difficult things I don't want to do first. So I don't have to spend the rest of my day having anxiety about it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love that frame because it's such an important one. And I think that what I always tell my patients and remind my kids as well now is that it doesn't take a long time to do these things. It's not like you have to take 2 hours in the morning and meditate and do gratitude practice. You can do it in 5 minutes or even 30 seconds, right? So, I mean, and I'm sure, and you just kind of find ways to do this throughout your day as resets as you go, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, in the evening, me and my husband have wind down routines. That's another way to manage stress because getting high.
I was thinking you say wine, like wind down, like having wine.
No, that's not me. I don't even drink. So
I know you don't. That's just funny.
Wine will actually increase anxiety.
Yes.
And reduce your quality of your sleep. So I do not recommend that.
Yes.
Whatever fallacy about the resveratrol and the helping sleep is not true. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But
no, you're not. You're not at all wrong. Yeah, those old studies have been debunked anyway, as far as resveratrol having any longevity effects. So please continue your wind down routine.
Yeah. So we know that getting high quality sleep also significantly reduces the level of stress in the body, right? So we have to get high quality sleep, but how you do that matters. So my wind down routine or sleep protocol starts at about 6:30, 7 p.m. as soon as the sun goes down. So I'm lucky enough to have a sunset view. So as soon as I start to see the sun go down, I turn on the red lights and orange lights, which are right behind me. So my whole house looks like a red light district, but that's helping to allow melatonin to start producing naturally without suppressing it through all of the blue light. This is exciting. So I've always known about the red light phone trick. So if you Google red light phone trick, you can turn your phone totally red, but it also works on Apple TV. My husband does not love this. But
I can imagine.
Yes, he says that the picture is compromised. I think it looks great, but anyways, you can turn the TV red, which is
I didn't know you could do that with the TV. Interesting. Yeah. I knew.
Yeah. Before my husband, I actually never watched TV. I didn't even really have a TV. So, but now we do watch TV and we watch, something in the evening to wind down. Nothing anxiety inducing because that's not going to help your sleep.
No.
So starting at sunset, I switch on all the red lights. I view the evening sunset because that anchors your circadian rhythm, right? So I view evening or morning sun as soon as I get up. That lets your brain and body know, hey, it's time to wake up. And it's great for energy and it's great for sleep later. And then I watch the sunset as it goes down because, again, these color spectrums are signaling to our bodies, the ancestral part of us, okay, this is what time of day it is, time to wind down. So I love doing that. I love making sure my magnesium is optimized. I love this topical magnesium spray. So it's like a little bit of a ritual of just like spraying it and rubbing it. Sometimes I give my husband a massage with this magnesium spray.
Right.
But we do all the things. We go on a walk at like 5, then we watch the sunset. Well, we eat dinner, then go on a long walk, then we watch the sunset. And just for us as a married couple, we cuddle. That's really relaxing. And we're in bed every day. Yeah, boosting my oxytocin. And we're in bed by 8:30 or 9 o'clock every single night. And it's funny because my husband, he always thought he was a night owl. Because he would stay up. Well, first of all, he was eating at like 10 p.m., which is no-go anymore. We're done eating by like 5:30.
Right.
But he would always go to bed at 12 or 1. And once you start naturally getting up every day at 4:30 or 5, you're going to be tired at 8:30 or 9. So that's one sure way to shift your circadian rhythm. We also have a completely blackout room. So you can't see your hand in front of your face in my bedroom. It's amazing because even if light's hitting our skin, that can disrupt our melatonin production. I started doing a weighted blanket recently. My husband's always loved one, but Oura Ring says it increases sleep quality by about 2% for all Oura users. So I really enjoyed that. Okay. I keep the room super cool. So it's about 65 degrees Fahrenheit because we know that our body drops down in temperature while we sleep. And keep
you have a Faraday. You got the Faraday cage.
I have a Faraday cage. Yep. Reducing the EMF and RF exposure. For me, again, it's like sleep is this time where we should just restore our body so deeply. So getting to bed at a good time, reducing toxins. So our mattress is 100% got certified organic. Our bedding is all organic. Or the weighted blanket's organic. Everything is organic. And then we have the Faraday cage, and it's amazing because I take the meter in there and it's literally 0. So it's awesome. We also have our Wi-Fi switch off at night. So at 9 o'clock, Wi-Fi is on a timer that switches off. Phones are on airplane mode, but you just want to really optimize your environment. All of that is going to be beneficial for fertility.
And that's what I was going to get back to. Because I think this is a larger conversation about health optimization, about human optimization, but through the lens of fertility. So when you're talking about, you talked about toxic burden and measuring that, what other things are you measuring from a fertility side? And this can come into a broader conversation about some of the things that you're measuring very regularly overall. But are there anything specific that you want to mention on the fertility side? And then we can kind of talk about like the larger things that you're kind of measuring on a regular basis that also obviously are important in this and the larger context.
Yeah, absolutely. I think nutrient testing is really important when it comes to fertility because we know that we need to optimize our nutrients. So again, twice a year, I do a test called the Nutri-Eval. You and I spoke about that when you were here, but that everyone always asks me, what supplements are you taking? What supplements are you taking? And it's like, it's very bio-individual. If you took all the supplements I'm taking for the protocol that I have, it probably wouldn't make sense. Ingredients like omega-3s, really important, or supplements are really important because they're anti-inflammatory. We want to keep inflammation levels low to optimize fertility. Things like NAC sometimes can be helpful. But again, you want to know what your levels are. Vitamin D should be optimized. It's not really a one size fits all. I do take an amazing prenatal. It's from a company called WeNatal, and they're all super high quality ingredients. It's a mix of a lot of the fertility ingredients in a great dose, and it's super easy. It's like 3 pills. But that's the prenatal that I've been on for over a year and a half. As soon as I met my husband, actually, I put him on the men's prenatal because we can talk about it's 50-50, right? But so we're both on a great prenatal. I think that's an easy way for women to, if you can't do the Nutri-Eval testing, just to get on a really high quality prenatal. And I love the movement of prenatals. I mean, OBGYN, some of them are still recommending like a folic acid gummy. That's what I was recommended like 3 years ago when I was at an OBGYN. And I was like, okay, thank you, but no, thank you. I'll take my own recommended because it's like quality is so incredibly important. So
for sure. Yeah.
I love that. But making sure your omega-3 levels are where they should be. And then nutrients in general are optimized. We want to make sure things, like selenium and our vitamin C and our B vitamins. And, if you have MTHFR, you want to be taking a methylated B vitamin, which I think is probably, if you're going to take B vitamins, probably the best option for most people.
Just take a methylated. At this point.
But the Nutri-Eval, if you want to get really serious about it, it'll tell you exactly what you need. So like last Nutri-Eval, I needed to bump up my vitamin C. So therefore I did that. And that's why it's impossible for me to give recommendations to people or like even really share my supplement routine because it's so much for what I am doing, what my goals are, and what my health status is. So I think that's a really, and you can also there's also the metabolomics, right? From Genova as well. That one's a little easier because it's just like a blood spot, but it'll essentially just tell you your nutrient status. So making sure that your nutrient status is optimized is really important for fertility. And you can try to get it through foods. Like I do take a food first approach and I try to get everything I need from foods, but the test will tell you if you're not hitting that mark because it is so much harder today to get all of those nutrients from food, even if you're eating, the highest quality foods. So that's really important. The next thing, sorry.
No, that's okay. I love it because I was just going to mention, I use those tests all the time. And the Nutri-Eval and the metabolomics, like we discussed when I was in LA with you. And I used to give talks and I would ask everybody on the audience, how many people were taking supplements? And this is like biohacker kinds of conferences and things like that. And everybody would put their hands up. And I'd say, how many people are actually measuring what they need and are taking supplements as a result of what they need? And then like maybe 5% of the audience was like putting up their hands. And now that's changing, which is really good because I think, again, my approach, your approach to our personal supplementation is going to be very different depending on those laboratory tests. So I do think it's great you gave us some general recommendations from a prenatal perspective, because not everybody can spend the money and has practitioners in their network that can do it. But I think at the same time, if you can measure and you can find out, so you don't over supplement with things. I think that's a problem that I see a lot is that people are actually over supplementing with omega-3 now. And then their ratio between omega-3 and omega-6 is actually still inflammatory because their omega-3s are too high compared to their omega-6. And then that causes the same issues if your omega-6s are high. So I just want to kind of, I think, echo what you said there and double down on people, thinking about that before they start taking supplements without really knowing why they're taking them.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I have kind of different buckets. So I have, I do take some things that aren't necessarily really easy to measure, although I do measure my NAD levels, but I have like longevity supplements where that would be like NMN or NR, NAD. And then I have like some mitochondrial stuff. And then I have some like spermidine, which these are just like fun little things, but all my core supplements are based on exactly what I need. So I think that's really important. The next thing in terms of testing or optimization for fertility that I'm doing is, and I just want to preface this too, I guess preface is a little late, but I know that this is a really sensitive topic and my heart goes out to anyone that is struggling with fertility. There's a lot of times in which it's not our fault. It's not your fault. And that's really important to know. I'm just sharing personally what I'm doing. And then we can talk about, I've done an entire battery of tests from vaginal ultrasounds to AMH and LH and all these different labs. But, at the end of the day, also, I haven't gotten pregnant yet. We haven't started our family. So we will see what happens. But I just want to really just say that my heart goes out to you if you're struggling with this, because it's one of the most, I think, sensitive topics that we have. But also, I think that there needs to be hope. I don't like the idea of just saying, okay, the stats are looking really bad, so let's not do anything. Fertility and health they're the same thing, right? In a lot of ways. Like, so if you optimize what's going to be better for your general health, then like your fertility is also, it's all one body. It's just like what we do for our body is going to be good for our brains, right?
Absolutely.
Either way, I think it's a good move. So moving on to gut testing. I mean, I think the gut is the foundation of health. I've seen this within my own health. I see it all the time with friends or patients at the clinic. If you improve the gut, so many other things improve, from hormones to sleep to stress levels, so many things. So I do the GI effects by Genova also. I've had a variety of bad things that I found throughout. 3 years ago, I had a parasite. Thank goodness I was doing the test, because who knows how I got it? Eating a piece of food that wasn't fully washed, who knows, travel. But that parasite was then causing all this inflammation in my GI tract. So if I hadn't caught that, then it could eventually have led to Crohn's, IBS, some major issues. But I think optimizing the gut is so important. And I also just think you should do it with a practitioner, because the gut's so complicated. I get asked all the time if I have a probiotic recommendation, and I don't. Because I don't think probiotics are one size fits all also. You could actually be feeding the wrong types of bacteria. So if you are going to make an investment and you have some income, doing a test like that, I think it would be one of the first places I would start, actually, would be a gut test. Because like I said, it impacts so many other things. Also, your mood, the gut and the brain are directly connected. We have neurons that live inside our gut. So if you want to improve your mood, the gut is a great place to start. But also, like we talked about, not only will we pass essentially our microbiome off to our offspring, but also I think it has a big role in fertility. And the phases of gut health is also very specific, in at least how we do it at my clinic. First, you got to get rid of any like major invaders, like bad yeast overgrowth or parasites, viruses, things like that. And there's also now like connections to a lot of different conditions, such as autoimmune and viruses in the gut, things of that nature. So that will probably change your life if you really optimize your gut. And I've also had some of the best gut results like we've ever seen. So all zeros on the GI effects, with just 1, 2 on dysbiosis, which I don't even know if you can get a 0 on dysbiosis, because we have trillions of gut bacteria, more bacteria than we have human cells. So
by far,
I was really happy with that. But then I went on a little antibiotic, and I can attest that it really does significantly negatively impact your gut microbiome. So now I'm on a new gut microbiome optimization before we get ready and have babies. But I think that's also super important, the gut.
Yeah, I think it's a really great point. There's definitely no one size fits all for the gut. And it can be such a long process for people to improve over time. And it's not an easy process. Oftentimes, like you said, you have to do a lot of cleanup first. And then when you do like the basic cleanup, then it's actually, things can actually look worse and feel worse before they actually get better. And that's actually hard to explain to people. And because I do the GI effects with patients as well, using the framework that we have at Health Optimization Medicine, which is the nonprofit that helps support the podcast. And it's a challenge to have that conversation. Look, the things might feel a little bit worse before they get better. And you might have a little bit of challenges along the way. We have a general strategy when it comes to gut health overall, but I think it's such an important piece that, one size does not fit all when it comes to this. And I really appreciate you saying that, Kayla. With the gut testing and gut optimization, the big thing you mentioned there as well is antibiotics. So most of us have been on antibiotics at some point. It sounds like you had to be on one recently as well. And it's a big challenge, right? Because it's like the nuclear option for your gut. But I also want to say, and I'm sure you'll agree with this and maybe add on to it, is like, it's not the end of the world. Like there are ways to support the system if you do have to go on antibiotics.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, look, we're blessed to have interventions that potentially can save our life, as my audience knows. But this was another thing I did for fertility and pregnancy, but just for me. I'm not saying in any way that you can't have breast implants, but I decided I got breast implants when I was very young. I was like 18, just seemed like a thing to do. I don't know. My mom had them. And so I got those, but I got them out only because I know you can breastfeed. I know all of this. But for me, I just wanted to have the most on brand, because it also didn't feel aligned for me anymore. But I got an explant. And when you have a surgery of any kind, you have to take antibiotics. So it was fun for me. I mean, it wasn't the most exciting time to see my gut go from kind of perfect to really not perfect. But it really backed up.
Yeah. You had all the tools and the technologies and the things that are already in place to be like, okay, now I know what to do. Even if I do have to have an intervention. And many of us during our life are going to have these things. But if you have the tools and the practices in place to know that you can be resilient, I mean, that's really the key in life anyway, right? Because things are always going to get crazy at some point. Pardon the interruption. This episode is brought to you by Transcriptions, makers of precision-dosed, physician-formulated, and pharmaceutical-grade formulas in the form of a buccal troche. For this episode, check out Tromune. Is your immune system needing a little bit of help? Most of us have a hard time, especially as the fall is coming up here. Flus, colds, especially if you have kids, you travel a lot. Tromune is your support. It's your protection. You take it at night. It increases deep sleep. It actually treats infection. It can actually combat infection directly. It decreases inflammation. I use it regularly and it's fantastic when I travel or when I'm under stress. Go to transcriptions.com, save 10% on your order by using code POD10 at checkout. Now back to the show.
And I know that expenses is a big thing for a lot of people, but the way I think about it too, I mean, of course, if you have no disposable income, that's a different situation. But if you do, I always say, I have a $0 budget for alcohol. I have a $0 budget for going out partying. I have a $0. I don't buy nice, expensive clothes. I don't care about handbags. It's a little bit priorities, but also if you're going to be just buying a ton of supplements and trying to troubleshoot yourself and hope something works, I mean, you can get a gut test for somewhere around $400 something. Then usually that comes with a provider to actually analyze it. And then you get a plan that you pretty much know is going to work if you work with a good provider. And we have an amazing nurse practitioner that was from the Cleveland Clinic Center for Functional Medicine. And one of her biggest things is gut health. And I just see her improve these people's guts and they think better and they feel better and their skin can clear up. This thing with women and one industry, this is a bit of a tangent, but I can't stand, is the skin products industry. It's okay, if you have skin issues, if you have rashes or psoriasis or acne, that's a signal from your body that something is wrong. And it's no amount of just creams are going to fix that. It's you have to look, and peel back the layers and figure out what's going on. And I just hate that women end up spending so much money on all of these products to try to fix an issue when you could go spend $400 to $600 on this gut test, get a plan, and that's probably going to make a bigger impact.
I love that. I mean, the skin is such a window to what's going on inside. And I was actually speaking to a friend yesterday who, as a kid, she's not that old. She's maybe in her mid-20s now. So maybe 10 years ago, she was using all these skin products and didn't know. And she started getting really bad headaches and these really bad rashes. And she ended up getting heavy metal toxic from them. Wow. And because a lot of these cosmetics are actually, she was telling me that they're weighted to make them feel heavier with heavy metal sometimes. And I don't know, maybe this is in certain locations. He was in Scandinavia at the time, but I think we forget that Dr. Ted, who's one of my colleagues at Health Optimization Medicine, he likes to say that the skin is the reverse of your gut. Your gut is inside and trying to protect everything from going out into the body. So the gut is really still the outside, the environment, the inside, the lumen itself. Whereas the skin is trying to protect you from the outside environment. It's your biggest organ. Although I think some people will sometimes argue that the muscles are bigger organs than the skin, but I think it's a matter of speaking, right? The skin is huge for that.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And going back to toxins being in products, we want to reduce our toxic burden only for optimal health, but of course, for optimal fertility. And then the other thing that I've been thinking about a lot is, so we kind of have like this 3-month window, right? Where the eggs that are going to be released are simmering up to the top. And I say the same thing with my husband too. I think, does sperm regenerate every 72 days fully?
I think it's like within a week for most men, they're back up. But I think it can be about 72 hours. I think it changes as you get older, I think. I have to take a look at that.
Okay. Or 72 hours. Yeah. And so anyways, he's doing his own thing. So he's like avoiding sauna right now and avoiding hot tub, because we know from a male fertility perspective, you're not really supposed to be heating up that area so much. So he's avoiding some of those things. But for me, the 3 months, like let's just say if you're planning to get pregnant or trying to conceive, I would really lean into over the 3 months prior to that, just optimizing your health as much as possible. Really focusing on reducing toxic burden, really working out, sweating, exercising, eating, as healthy as possible. That's the way I'm thinking about it, at least.
Yeah.
And so I've like upped my sauna exposure. Really, of course, like I'm always sticking to my exercise routines, but always making sure to do that. And just being more cautious than ever in terms of diet, just all the things. Really, I did all my labs. So I did the gut test, I did the Nutri-Eval, total toxic burden last month. And then I'm taking all of that data, and that's how my protocol is developed. It's
Makes
guided
sense.
by all of these different things.
Yeah. And this is what we should do. I'm sorry to interrupt. I was going to say, and this is what we should be doing as individuals, but also as practitioners, right? If you're a practitioner that's listening, like this is how we really can guide our patients and give them their journey so that they know where they're starting from and obviously know what their goals are, but then help them along the way. And then sometimes it's very easy. Sometimes it's very difficult, right? But having that data is so important. And then you can do real things and have real action items as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. And to talk a little bit about some labs and just something that is so sad, I feel like there is no lab that's going to tell you the quality of your eggs, right? You can only know that if you do egg retrieval, and then they're actually made into an embryo, and then you can test the quality of the eggs. But we do have some labs that tell us a little bit about our fertility status potentially. They're not be all end all, but for example, there's a lab called AMH, and that is essentially a measurement of your ovarian reserve. So how many eggs you probably have left. So when I did all my fertility testing, I looked at that. Mm-hmm. I actually just got a new one this morning. So I had it drawn last Friday. I just wanted to see where we're at. And it's 5.93, which is what I've been told. So I've done this whole fertility journey with 2 different fertility doctors, and they've told me that all the markers that they can see look incredible, like probably that of like a mid 20-year-old-ish and I'm 33. So all these things, toxin reduction, the way I've been eating, I really hope that has played a significant role. But again, if you haven't done that, I don't want to say that anything will be problematic. Of course, we just don't know that. But that's something that I think knowing that number is incredibly important. So if you are even in your 20s, because I've met a lot of women in their early 30s that end up having a really low number, and that should indicate something. So you need to take action. It's just if you look at your blood work and you have values that are way too low or way too high, you want to have some type of plan for that. So I would recommend women looking at that number just so you know, so you're not kind of like flying blind thinking I have so much time or I can wait. But I think that is something that I would look at if I was curious as to fertility status or I wanted to have babies and I might be waiting a little while. So that's a lab I would look at.
Yeah, that's a great one. And so I just looked it up. So just to make sure on the sperm regeneration, you're correct. It is 72 hours, but the sperm quality, obviously as man gets older, does get more declines, just as ovarian health also declines with age as well. So I think it's really important that you're also mentioning everything you're doing for fertility, but at the same time, these also the things that you're having your husband do at the same time to optimize his health. And like the sperm count piece and the sperm health is a really important piece. I just remember, like on the hyperbaric side, there have been studies showing that this can help with sperm mitochondrial function, right? And so that's one of the reasons why we think it helps. And a lot of women that are having a hard time getting, not a lot, but there's a growing number of women that are using things like hyperbaric therapy, for example, and seeing benefit because it's improving sperm health. And thankfully it's very easy for men as to give sperm. We can give a little supply there and they can test it under the lab, no problem. It's much more difficult for women. And that's why I think it's harder to get the information for women. So this AMH it's anti-Müllerian hormone, right? So this is one they can check. I think what I've loved about like your platform, Kayla, and what you've done is that you've really kind of, doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down, whatever, on women's health, women's biohacking, women's performance, just to move the conversation more globally. So like, where do you see like the biggest discrepancies on that side compared to, for women's health, what's been lacking, what's been missing, and what are you trying to kind of create there as a result of that vacuum that's been there on that side for a long time?
Yeah, unfortunately, there are so many unknowns right now in relation to women's health. And I want to say I'm extremely grateful for all of the men that have really brought optimal health performance to the forefront, because it's incredible. And the conversation has definitely started, but a variety of things from nutrient status with women. We know that nutrient status changes throughout the menstrual cycle.
Yes. Yeah.
But we're not really taking action on that, right?
Yeah.
We're not really talking about it much. We know that women they internalize stress more and are reporting to have higher stress levels than men. And I'm not saying that's because men have less stress than women, but it's how we internalize it.
Right.
And even the fear centers in our brain.
Yep.
So when we think about that and we think about potentially our stress levels being higher, that might mean that we can't do as much cold plunge as men. I mean, throughout the entire 28 to 30-day cycle, we're having hormonal changes throughout the entire thing. You guys are on this 24-hour cycle. It's really simple. It's very stable. And so I think there's a lot of areas that we really need to lean in for women, because for me, when I first got into this industry and I was just following all the protocols for men by men, I was doing way too much cold plunging. Now I don't cold plunge at all in the luteal phase. So we have the follicular phase, we have ovulation, and then we have the luteal phase as a woman. And now most things in my life are tailored around that. So even, I'll have more red meat during actual menstruation in the follicular phase because you're losing blood, right? So I'm tailoring that. I'm adding in nutrients that could be lacking throughout the cycle, of course, based on my own labs. But that's one aspect that's missing, is just for women, by women protocols. And again, this is all N of one, right? Like I've disclosed all my labs publicly. I share what I eat. I share what I do. I started creating YouTube content, which has been so fun, of just like video format of what I'm doing. But we all have to be just listening to our bodies, because like we talked about, women have such massive shifts throughout the month, even when it comes to exercise. Some new research came out that you don't have to go all out for hypertrophy. Have you seen these? You don't have to go to failure, which is great.
Yeah,
I used to think I had to go to failure. Now I listen to my body and I have a little bit more balance as a woman, because I'm realizing that that's what works best for me. We also know that women need more sleep than men. So I don't feel anymore. I used to feel like I needed to wake up at the same time as my husband, but I now know it's okay. He needs less sleep than I do, and that's all right. Especially again during menstruation, I need even more sleep then, because our bodies are preparing to conceive a child. And then every month it's going through this entire like building, shedding phase. And then when it comes to pregnancy, this is a whole other thing, but I'm really excited. During my first pregnancy, I've partnered with a few of my friends that own a bunch of the companies that and I'm going to do really comprehensive labs every 2 weeks. So I'm going to do
every 2 weeks.
A couple hundred biomarkers. I'm going to be doing NAD. I'm going to be doing not the microbiome every 2 weeks, but I'm going to do the microbiome probably at least 4 times, maybe more, because to my knowledge, we don't have actual data on what is happening in a woman's body when she's pregnant in a very granular way, right?
Yeah.
And so what's happening to biological age? What's happening to NAD levels? And is there a way to potentially reduce some of the symptoms that come along with pregnancy, morning sickness, the fatigue? Is there any way that we can, if we know that we have nutrient deficiencies during menstrual cycle, then I'm sure we have them while we're creating a human being. So,
and more so, right? Because you're having to give all these nutrients to the child and they get preferential treatment as well. So this is a big thing, right? So that's why the loving parasite, as we say, right? Because this is this human organism is taking your oxygen at a preferential level. It's taking your nutrients at a preferential, because that's what the woman's body does. But I think it's fantastic that you're going to do this. Do you know of anybody or any of this that's been done before? This seems like it's going to be a first really in this kind of detail that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I think it will be a first. If anyone knows of anything, please send it to us. But I've consulted a lot of different clinicians and researchers, and I think this is going to be the first. And I'm not going to do it with all of our pregnancies because I want to just enjoy them. But I think this is information that we need. And look, we're all humans. So all the foundations of health, let's say sleep, stress reduction, nutrition, exercise, social circles, those are things that benefit both sexes.
Of course. Yeah.
But it's these like small refinements that can really benefit women. And I think women weren't required to be in research even. Was it 1993 or 1996?
Yeah, it wasn't until very recently. Yeah, there was I had a lady on our podcast a couple of weeks ago, but she was just telling me that the ban was in the 1970s, but by all intents and purposes, no women were allowed in research at all, even before that, for basically forever. It's only been since the early 90s, somewhere around that time, where women have been allowed in research, but doing research on women is extremely difficult because, as she would say, you're 4 different humans every month, and you have all these different cycles that are going on. And so when are you actually doing the laboratory testing for the study? And then what other things are being controlled? She's actually working on some of that now to try to create standards on how to actually have women in research trials and get and understand the results, right? Because it's very challenging.
Well, the great thing is though, is with these at-home wearables like Aura, and then I have a connection to an app called Natural Cycles. You know, we're getting so much data and we actually know where women are in their cycle. And so I think that's really promising in terms of the future of women's research and the demand is there, right? Like women want for women by women protocols. There's a lot of men that have great protocols and, you know, great health optimization routines, but women really do want things for themselves because we don't want to be steering ourselves in the wrong direction by doing too much either, you know?
And I think that's a really common scenario, right? What you talked about earlier, where you were doing cold plunges every day. And it's not necessarily what I don't think anybody should be doing, honestly. But certainly I think because of the phases of a woman's cycle, it's a very different scenario depending on when they are and where they are. I think in general, when everything gets popular, whether it be, I remember this like 5 or 6 years ago when keto got so popular, then again becomes commoditized. And like you have your keto cookies and your keto pizza and it just like cold therapy has gotten commoditized now. You need to do it more, the better every single day of your life. And that's going to mess up your hormones, even if you're a male or a female. So there is part of that, right? Everything gets commoditized and things, but I have 3 girls, I have 3 daughters, and I have a son. And you'll think about this, I think later when you're thinking about this now. I was young and dumb and just coming out of being just finishing residency when I had started having a family. But you think about like, how can you make it better for them? How can you like make this easier for them? And I think that's really what your goal is here, right? With all the things that you're doing. Yeah,
absolutely. And I'm excited to keep learning, figuring out how everyone always asks me, how are you going to have these routines when you have kids? So that's going to be fun to figure
That's a good
out
one.
Also.
That's a good one.
I really prioritize my sleep and I really prioritize a lot of these like health because, you know, it makes me feel great. Makes me think better, makes me be a better person. So
that's a good question to ask you, Kayla, because you've been very regimented and had very much control of your environment. But children don't allow that so much.
I know. That's what I've heard. So we'll have to do another podcast when I do become a mom and about, you know, I think obviously the health of our children is paramount right now. I mean, kids are sicker than they've ever been. I mean, you know, I even saw something going around about kids being prescribed statins at like 15. It's like, this is a really big problem and we have to care about the health of our children and we have to start doing something and fixing it. So, you know, maybe we can talk about how I do that with my family when we get there.
I love it. This has been fun, Kayla. I want to ask you one more question. And it's just a kind of an overall question we ask everybody at the end of our podcast. And we've talked about this in various ways, but maybe we can whittle it down. So what are 3 ways that you'd recommend anybody listening can live smarter, not harder? And that's just the name of the podcast. But are there 3 main things that like maybe that are universal that anybody can do, not resources notwithstanding kind of thing?
Go to bed earlier tonight. Don't let doom scrolling or Netflix steal your time. It's just simply not worth it. High quality sleep is everything and it's going to set you up for success the next day. Integrate low level movement throughout the day. Just simple tweaks. Take your calls on walks. I have a walking treadmill if I can't get outside, but move your body. We cannot be sedentary. And I think the 3rd thing would be, leverage nature and sunshine as often as possible because this feeds our biology and our mitochondria in a really beneficial way. And these are all things that are free. And help doesn't have to be, it can be expensive. It doesn't have to be. And the things that move the lever the most in terms of health optimization and even, reversing biological age are the things that we do every day. So work on optimizing the things you do every day. We eat, we sleep, we move, we breathe, and we have relationships. So focus on upgrading those.
Yeah, I think you're probably the most measured female on the planet, or very close to it if you're not. But I love that you say most of the stuff we can do is for free, right? You don't have to measure all these things. You don't have to get like significant amounts of benefit. So, and of course you can do all the measuring and it can be really helpful, but I love that.
I have not only the measurements, I'm also looking at grip strength and lung health. And you guys can see all that in my protocol if you want to. I've done soft plaque analysis of my arteries, and I started doing full body MRIs like 5 years ago. And, I have a hyperbaric chamber and a PEMF machine and all this stuff. Like my home is basically a clinic, but I don't want that to be the narrative, because that's like, again, those small refinements when you're really in this, but the biggest movers are just the things that are free or really low cost.
Yeah, I love it. So Kayla, where can people find out more about you and what you're doing?
Yeah, I post free content every day on my Instagram. That's at Kayla Barnes, KaylaBarnes. That's it for Instagram. Sorry. And the website is kaylabarnes.com, KaylaBarnes.com. I also have a podcast that Dr. Scott will be on in the next few weeks. So it's called Longevity Optimization. I put episodes out every week, and definitely a lot of, of course, we had you on. You're not a female, but I am interviewing a lot of females just to get their perspective on the podcast. So all things, just look up Kayla Barnes, and you can find my YouTube channel with long form content on my routines and so much more.
Well, Kayla, I hope I see you again soon, and enjoy your hyperbaric chamber. Enjoy all your awesome technologies, but enjoy the day-to-day with your husband, and good luck. I look forward to speaking again soon and talking about the babies and the lack of capacity to have control. So,
well, I love that. And I can't wait to see you again soon.
Okay. Take care.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Smarter Not Harder podcast, where we give you 1 cent solutions to $64,000 questions. I had a great time interviewing Kayla Barnes. I hope this was a fantastic episode for you as well, learning about fertility, optimization, whether you're male or female, especially if you're female, but definitely if you're male too, whether you're looking to optimize your health, all of these things here. There's tools, techniques, and practices for all of us. If you like this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe below. Please share with your friends, and we'll see you next time.